have a save file where I tried to play rotationally, but each household is very isolated from the others in terms of storylines and their goals. What intrigued me initially about rotational gameplay was the fact that since you weren't playing just one household, you'd always have variety in your gameplay, right? But really, my favorite storylines are the ones where things are messy and intertwined, when the households grow to have a shared history and feel like they have depth. Some of the families in that save file were connected, but for the most part, they were all living their own lives independent of each other. Instead of having a separate storyline for each household and playing each in isolation from each other, I want to focus on creating connections between the households I play, ultimately with the goal of a shared storyline across these households. I want to develop a feeling of community between these households. So now I want to start playing rotationally differently in a way that seamlessly connects the households I'm playing with each other. Depending on how many households you're playing, it can seem complicated though at first to figure out how to connect them all without it becoming overwhelming. I figured out how to do this though. To start, I like to keep things simple. I have a main sim or household that acts as the glue or connector between the sims and the other households I'm playing. So I usually have an idea for the main sim storyline already, right? So I simply add the other households to the storyline, however it might make sense to get things started. For example, this is Keith Fox. He's the star of my current save file, and the world currently revolves around him, really. Instead of trying to think of some overarching storyline that ties everyone in equally, I first looked into how I could tie other Sim stories into Keith's story. And to make those connections make sense, I could get to know each household first by playing them, then brainstorm how they can connect to each other, or I could simply provoke interactions and see where things go, and spontaneously think of the rest of the storyline as I play, or a mix of both. That's Umber Grove at the door. Let's let him in. So I could do a mix of both, but I want to make the connections meaningful from the get-go. So I actually chose Enneagram personality types for the different people in Keith's life, and I came up with different relationship dynamics based on how each personality type would interact with Keith's personality type. So he's an enthusiast, that's a type 4, I believe. I collected all the people currently important in Keith's life on this board here, and I selected Enneagram types for each one of them. So it's actually not a 4. He used to be a type 4 individualist, but Keith, I decided it's actually a type 7 Enneagram personality type, an enthusiast. So I selected personality types for each sim based on how these personality types interact with each other and the Sims traits, and also where they currently are in their relationship to Keith. I brainstormed how they relate to each other. You can watch my last video after this one, so finish this one first, but you can watch that last video for more details on how I brainstormed those relationship dynamics. I'll link it in the description box below. So Sienna Grove is Keith's fiance. They met on Cupid's Corner and hit it off immediately, had an amazing first date, an amazing few dates after. He moved in and now they're engaged. And they're highly compatible. So not just trait-wise, but they're both enthusiasts. They both have a similar energy to each other and they really fit well together. So it's super easy for them to have fun together and go on adventures and to push each other in that sense, but sometimes they can shy away from confrontation and serious conversations, and if you've got two people in a relationship that are like that, that's obviously not ideal. So that might be a point of contention between the two. Then we have Umber Grove, who we just now saw came in at the door. He is the brother of Sienna, future brother-in-law of Keith. So he's going to be a very important part of their lives. He also has a wife, Juniper, a son, Ren, and they actually have another little baby son called Louis. But Umber is a type 5 investigator. He's very introspective, and he helps keep Sienna and Keith grounded. Of course, he always has Sienna's interests at heart, and he wants to make sure that, of course, he'll always, have his sister's interests at heart. And he sees now that there are two high-energy individuals in one relationship. They kind of push each other. They're both very ambitious, but sometimes they have difficulty reining it in. And so he helps keep them grounded. Then we have Lucas Wolf, which is a sim that Keith met while he was still living in Moonwood Mills. And Lucas, as you can see here, he's a bit of a loner, he's gloomy, socially awkward, and he's a type 6 loyalist, which means he's more on the cautious side of things. He's, more reserved. And that actually is a complete opposite to Keith, high energy and outgoing and adventurous. And so they complement each other in that way because Keith helps push Lucas out of his shell and to be more adventurous and enjoy life more, while Lucas can be the voice of reason in Keith's ear and also always have his back. Then we have Christopher Volkov. He's a type 1 reformer, so he is a perfectionist, not only in terms of his Sims 3 traits, but also ties into his Enneagram personality. He's very structured, and he's got more of a mentor role, I think, when it comes to Keith. That hasn't developed in the game quite yet, but I've got this planned now for Christopher and Keith. Christopher will basically challenge Keith's lack of discipline and help him meet his goals. But at the same time, Christopher can be impatient at times, and so he might push too far. Last but not least, we have Lily Zhu, who also lives in the same household as Christopher. They're both in Moonwood Mill, and she will play more the role of Keith's confidant. She is the type 8 challenger. She's bold, she's to the point, while also can be the voice of reason. I think she's the one that really, for the most, in comparison to the other Sims, really manages to strike that balance between giving Keith that straight talk he sometimes needs and supporting him in that way while keeping a safe space for him to confide in. So she somehow still manages to make him feel comfortable and vulnerable. And I actually brainstormed where Keith opens up to her and shares something with her later in the game. I haven't played it yet, but I brainstormed it in that video I mentioned, so definitely check that out. And that was basically based on prompts from the Enneagram personality type, so how they can interact with each other. And from that, it inspired a bit of storyline in regards to those two and how she can get to know him better, understand him better. And so I definitely recommend exploring that as well. So trying to figure out who are these other Sims in the households you're playing, how can they be related to maybe at the start your main Sim, right? Because it can be a bit complicated if now I try to figure out how is Lily related to Christopher, how is Christopher related to Sienna and Lucas, like then you have like so many different combinations and it can become overwhelming. So at first I try to focus one Sim is in the center and I try to look at, okay, what are the connections between these different Sims and how does that make sense? And then from that I can then build on the rest of the story. So as I play each household and I get to know them better, I'll get more ideas on how to continue to add branches, so to say, to the storyline that pertain to those Sims, so that Keith isn't always the driver or the center of the story. I actually want the Sims from the other households to be more than just pawns in Keith's story, right? I want to create a story that involves all of the Sims in the end equally. Just for the start, to keep things simple, I have one Sim that I basically can use to give direction to the story at the beginning. That is, like I said, the glue between these Sims. The more I play with those other Sims and get to know them better, I'll naturally figure out how they can play a role in the storyline in their own right and how they have a role with each other, within their community. I want to build like a community vibe. I want the Sims to have a shared goal, which I think would contribute to that community vibe, right? Because if you think of sport teams and stuff like that. Like they are held together by that common goal that they want to win some sort of championship. They have a common goal. They have something that they're all striving towards. And I think that'll automatically make everybody, like if you're pulling on the same string, then that'll help when I play each household for them to just go through a common goal. I want them to have a shared goal that they can work towards as a unit, as a community. And I can't wait to decide in this like group of Sims who's going to play the villain. Because imagine how much fun it'll be once it's time to play their household and basically work against everything your other households have been working towards. So I think that'll be fun. In every story, you usually have a hero or a protagonist. Obviously, at first glance, that'll be Keith. But who knows? Keith might not end up being the hero. I might actually choose another Sim for that, or maybe the hero will be different in each round. And speaking of rounds, organization is key. So let me show you how I organize my rotational gameplay. I really like to use Notion for this. I have a record in my Notion template that is dedicated to the save file. So in this case, we have Keith's save file. It has all the characters, the households, plans, all in one place. It even has a manager here that I can use for my rotational game plan to keep track of what's happening. So for example, here I've already added 4 households to my rotational gameplay. So we have the Fox household, of course, the Wolf household, so that's Lucas's household, the Grove family, so that is the brother-in-law of Sienna, and then we have the Volkov household, which has Lily and Christopher. And so with this overview here, I know who's currently in which round and in which order I'm playing them. I also have here some notes that helps remind me of how I actually want to play this rotationally. So I'm actually having this in 2 phases. So at the start, my goal is to get to know each household and build those relationships between them and, find that common goal. So I've added find a common goal real quick also to the notes. And so in this phase, I will swap the households at any time. I'll play each for as long as or little as I'd like in the moment, just to get a feel for things. I'll have aging turned off for everyone, so for played and unplayed households, and I'll disable neighborhood stories. And once I feel like the ball is rolling, I will start keeping track of the rounds and play households in order. So then I'll start actually using this portion, this rounds overview, and I'll turn on aging for everyone for played and unplayed households. I'll play each household for a week, then change households on Sunday at 3 a.m. At least that's the plan so far. I think it might be hard for me since Keith is the legacy family that I'm playing, and you know how attached you get to your legacy save files or legacy families. But the thing is, I plan on getting attached to every household, so I would hope that I would yearn to play the Wolf household as well, the Grove family, as I play them more, because obviously I'm attached to the Keith household because that's the only one I've really been playing. But I'm sure that it'll be easier to swap households and be away from the Fox one once I start having that emotional attachment to the other households as well. So that's the households view that I'll definitely be using once phase 2 begins. I also have this type of overview where we have the households organized by the round they're in. So if the Fox household, if I had already completed round 1, the Fox household would be down here in a round 2 section. This just lets me see at a bird's eye view some notes about those households, the members, the property that they live on, the world that they live in, their current funds and net worth if I added those details. If you're familiar with rotational gameplay and keeping track of that in any way, then you probably recognize this setup a little bit. So I know a lot of simmers like to use Excel or G-Sheets, like to create a spreadsheet of their different characters for each household. So I have something similar here set up in my Notion. So I have the Fox household with each character that's in that household, their current round. I have notes for each sim and I can see their current goals. So that is automatically rolled up based on the goals that I added to their individual profiles. And it's only the ones that are relevant to where they are right now in life. So for example, if it's a life goal, then only the goals for the current milestone are shown. If it's a bucket list goal, then only the goals from their current life stage are shown. And other than that, all the goals are shown. And then also I have any planned events that might be upcoming will be shown. We see any other information I might want to know. So if it's a legacy sim, what is their role, their life state, what is their life goal, their current career if they have one, any skills that they have in progress. So this basically just automatically lists any skills that I added to their profile that aren't yet mastered. And we have information about the most important relationships in their lives, so their spouse, partner, and children. And that's basically listed for the other households as well. So if I open up this toggle, I'll see the same information for the other households as well. And I really like that I have this toggle here, so I can only see the information that I really care about in that very moment. So if I'm playing the Fox household, I only see the Fox household's data. And I can just click on the Fox household as well to manage them directly from within their household profile. So we have a character profile and we have a household profile. And I personally like to work in the household profile because there we have little buttons here where I can quickly add a memory, a snapshot, a transaction. Here I also have space for the household notes and plans. And I can quickly click into a character, have their character profile open up in side peek view so I can make more changes like add a skill and stuff like that. So in the other view, in the rotational manager, it just gives you a bird's eye view of what is the current situation. It automatically pulls that data, but to actually like add a new skill or change the progress of a skill, for example, you'd have to do that in the character's profile, which is why I like to, when I'm playing a household, be in this view, because then it's super simple to just click on the sim and have all of their details at my fingertips. So for example, under achievements, we have all of Keith's skills, his current career, and his life goal. And I can easily just directly from here, edit things or add things to it, open that up in another side peek view. So I really like working from the household page. On a macro level though, so bird's eye view, of course, the save file is the heart of where things are. It's where I find all of my different households, all of the different characters, and of course have that quick overview of the different rounds and rotations. What I actually want to do next, so we currently have 4 different households in the mix. We have 2 households from Chestnut Ridge, we have 2 households from the Moonwood Mill region or world, and I actually want to add 1 or 2 more households to the mix from other worlds. I really like to use this map by Strangest Sea. I found it on Reddit. Basically, it shows how the different worlds are in relation to each other and on a map. So as you can see, we have these neighboring regions close to Chestnut Ridge. So we have Oasis Springs, Strangerville, Moonwood Mill I would count because it's still quite close. We have Evergreen Harbor is also quite close, and Granite Falls. Now, Granite Falls is, of course, a vacation world, so I wouldn't really count that as a world where I would want to look for other households for Keith to be close to. But we already have, of course, Sims he's close to in Chestnut Ridge. By default, we have Sienna, the love of his life, and her brother-in-law. We have a couple of households in Moonwood Mill we'll keep in touch with. And now I want to make connections in at least another world, just because I think it'd be fun to not only build community in the world he lives in, but with neighboring worlds as well. That'll bring variety to my gameplay as well, because I'm not just playing in the same world. I'll actually be playing with Sims in different worlds, and I have a mod actually that makes it to where Sims stay in the current world that they're in. And so this way I can also get to know other Sims that aren't just in Chestnut Ridge. I think that'll just be fun. And it'll be a natural, it's very organic for Keith to travel to Strangerville, or for someone from Moonwood Mill to travel to Strangerville, or Oasis Springs to Strangerville. And so that'll help me also with storytelling, like what makes sense, which households in the group of households I end up playing naturally will be closest to each other. Maybe, for example, those in Oasis Springs would never really interact much with those from Moonwood Mill because they're so far away, or in comparison to Strangerville and Chestnut Ridge. So I think that could be interesting also for my storytelling. So I want to scope out Oasis Springs first, just because that's one of my favorite worlds. So I definitely want to play with a household from this world. And again, and also, if you weren't aware, I'm actually playing with the Beyond Blooming save file by Analea. It's an excellent save file. I've been having a lot of fun with it so far. Really lovely Sims with storylines are in here. I think Analea selected also some really great builds that fit the worlds that they're in and just offer a lot to you, especially like community lots. It's important to me. And so I can highly recommend that save file if you've been looking for one. And I also decided not to customize it too much. I only have like one lot from that I placed for Keith when he was first getting his bearings in Moonwood Mill. Apart from that, I think I left everything. Well, I had to fix a buggy lot in Moonwood Mill, but that is really everything I've swapped. I actually stalled playing with Keith because I wanted to have a perfect save file, and I ended up giving up on that notion, and instead now I'm having fun actually playing the save file. So definitely get her a save file. Everything's already done for you, and you can just jump in and play. So currently the people in Keith's life are more or less, I'd say, normal income families, maybe a little bit lower income. I don't know, like maybe Moonwood Mill, because we have like a co-living situation. They're not rich. It seems like they're very, down to earth. So they're not, it's definitely not luxury. I think it would be fun to add a more wealthy household to the mix, to add that contrast. I'm immediately drawn to this house and this house. Who lives there? Oh, of course, Land Grab. So I would definitely say Land Grab and Watch are contenders. And then here we also have a couple of, nobody lives here, so that would have been a wealthy one. And apart from that, I mean, this is definitely not inexpensive, but I think I would like to look at the Land Grab household and see what they've got going on. So I know business is going to be something that's going to be important in Keith's storyline, with Sienna wanting to open up her own horse training school and Keith wanting to build a ranch. So maybe there's some sort of investment going on with the land grabs that I could tie into the storyline. So let's check them out. So here we go. We've got, what's his name? We've got Jeffrey Landgrab at the grill. He's family-oriented, outgoing, good, and domestic. Okay. And we've got Malcolm. He's evil, snob, dastardly. Okay, that's interesting. And Nancy's materialistic, ambitious, snob, business savvy. I think this could definitely be an interesting household to play with in relation to Keith and his storyline. And like I said, eventually have their own storyline within it. And this is a badass house. I mean, look at this. Oof. This is definitely not Moonwood Mill anymore. We're not in Chestnut Ridge anymore. Damn, they're living a life. I think I'm gonna choose this household for my 5th rotational household. So I add them to the Sim Guardian. So I've added the land grabs as characters to the save file. I've also added their property, the modern concrete mansion, which is a beaut. I've added that. I've also created a household for them. So now I can actually add that household to the rotation. So I'll do that here. They're the only other household I've saved in the save file, so I'll just add them. Order is number 5, so they're the last in this group, and then they'll also be in round 1. Now, this might already be enough households. I mean, 5 households for my taste is already quite a lot, so I might just leave it at that, but I'm still quite curious, considering how close Strangerville is to Moonwood Mill and Chestnut Ridge, I think it would be very interesting to check out what kind of families, what kind of households I can bring in from that. So here we are in Strangerville. Looks a lot like Chestnut Ridge. It has that, dusty, deserty vibe, westerny. So I think it would work well to actually maybe find a family here too if it doesn't become too complex and too much. Let's see who's here. We have Cowboy Cahill right here, the Curious family here, the little toddler, which sounds like a lot of work, if I'm gonna be honest. We have Roswell here. I'm not sure. Is that a cat with a hat? Oh no, it's a cat with a little jumper on. Okay, that's what we're looking at there. Here we have eclectic arts, which could be interesting considering Keith is artistic. He's a musician. I like that they have animals. Sigworth, okay, I like families. I like playing with families. So that could be interesting. But I think I might go for the eclectic arts. Like I said, I think that would tie in well with Keith's story. We can see. Let's check them out. Okay, this looks like a really cool group of Sims. We have a paranoid, bookworm, muser, geek goofball. Cool. We've got a cheerful art lover, gregarious bookworm. I think these work really well with Keith and also the other people. Creative music lover, bookworm, muser. Okay, I think we've landed on our sixth and final household that I'm going to add to the rotation. Oh, and they have little doggos. Love it. I might have to kick some of them out because I find pets to be actually a little bit stressful in work, like toddlers. So we'll see if we keep them. We might keep this big one. He's cool. Okay, what is she flipping out about? Ooh. We'll see when we play them. So just like with the land grabs, I've added everybody from the eclectic arts household to my Notion and created a household for them, which I added to the rotation. So now I have 6 different households, all in order, nice and neat, ready for me to then jump into rotational gameplay, this time a bit differently than I've been doing it in the past. And I think this way it'll be far less overwhelming because I'll be playing one storyline where everybody is following a similar thread, where there's a red thread going through the storyline, where everybody has some sort of important role in it. To keep things simple for the beginning, everybody has a role in regards to Keith's life. He's the glue between everything, and I'll figure out how the land grabs in the eclectic arts household fit into that mesh during gameplay. I think I'll let them organically build those relationships and connections once I get to know everybody from the households a bit better. It was super cool. Like, we have somebody who loves music in this household, and somebody who's paranoid, which I think might add some interesting gameplay, especially with Moonwood Mill also having, that werewolf background. I think that could be interesting. And then, of course, the land grabs being very much in money and real estate, considering that Keith wants to get a ranch and Sienna is going to start her own business soon. I think they would fall really naturally well into the storyline. And at some point, I think I'm also going to figure out the backstories for these, or at least figure out an Enneagram personality for the people in these households. And I think that'll help me deepen their relationships even more, because the Enneagram personalities help guide what kind of people are they, what are their motivations, their fears, their vices, and how they interact with other characters. If you're interested in the Notion template that I've showed here, if you're like, oh my god, that looks really cool, I want to get organized and on top of my rotational gameplay as well, I'll leave a link below. It's called the Sim Guardian, and it's like my ultimate dream Notion that I've built. You can learn more about it in the description below.